Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, a podcast and website by, for, and about baby boomers. And so tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a break from goal setting, which is what we've been talking about for the past few weeks, if you've been following along, and cover something a little bit different, namely New Year's resolutions. But actually, New Year's resolutions really are what? Well, they're nothing more than, you guessed it, goals. So I guess we're still going to be talking about goals anyway, but from a different perspective. And so, just before we get started, I want to apologize for those of you who are watching live. Turns out the evening slipped away from me. I got reading on some interesting things, and all of a sudden, oh my gracious, here it is, almost 8 o'clock. So, thank you for your patience. I'm glad to see you, and let's get started. So, like I said, we're going to do another. Well, actually, I didn't say it, but did want to let you know that we're going to be covering this again sometime before New Year's. I'm not sure whether it's going to be next week, which is Christmas week, and I may talk about Christmassy things there, or the week following. But so this is just kind of an introduction and overview, and I wanted to go over it so you had some idea what was coming, because like we've been talking about in other things, the concepts are simple, but actually implementing them takes a certain amount of oh determination, I guess is probably the best word. And so even though the concept is simple, like a lot of simple things, to really do it correctly takes a little bit of going on about. Excuse me for 1 second. Let's realize something happened to one of the lights, and so there's a glare. One moment, please. Live TV. There, that looks better. So the first step in setting long-term or even short-term goals, and setting goals at all, you have to write them down. Yes, actually write them down. You can use a computer or an application of some sort, but if you really want to make them kind of involve more of your brain and make them more memorable, then you really want to actually sit and write. You can write on a whiteboard. You can write on a piece of paper, which is my preference. Actually, one of my favorite devices, in the boy, if I had endless money, I would get one of these. There's a company, remarkable.com. They have the thinnest tablet that's made and has been for a number of years. And it's a monochrome, but grayscale monochrome tablet. And you can just write all sorts of things down on it. It's the ultimate toy. But no matter how you do it, one way or the other, you have to get it so that the things that you're thinking about in a general sense become very specific. And the easiest way to do that is to really write them down. And part of the reason, again, excuse me, for writing them is because when you really think through something and your brain actually goes through the process of writing it out, you're involving a lot of your body. And when you do that, it takes a lot of your brain to be involved. And when all your brain's involved, it's getting input from all the other sections of your brain. So while you're writing things out, excuse me, every so often we forget to mute the phone. So let me do something real quick here and turn him off. So when you do that, then all your brain becomes activated and involved in the decision. And if you say something like, oh, think of something good and tangible, I'm going to start running 10 miles every morning. All the rest of your brain, when you actually start writing that out and you write the word 10, and then you write the word miles, part of your brain's going to go, you can't walk 500 feet. How are you going to run 10 miles? And all your brain starts to get involved. And then you go, then you change it from I'm going to run 10 miles to I'm going to work up to running 10 miles a day. And by getting your whole brain involved, you get input from all the other aspects of your physiology and your psychology. And so it helps you write more rational and reasonable goals. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more even this evening, but we want to write goals that are really stretch goals, kind of big, hairy, scary goals, but you want them to be realistic, because if your goal is I'm going to learn how to fly, like in flap my arms and fly by the end of the month, then that's probably not going to happen and you're just going to be disappointed. If, however, you say something like, I'm going to work up to running 10 miles over the next year, 10 miles a day over the next year, then your brain will get set about how to actually make that help you accomplish that goal and the steps to get there. So that's why it's so important to write things down. And so again, what do we want to write on your list? We're going to go in this again and talk about it in more detail. But basically, I would suggest for your New Year's resolution, really you want to write down no more than four things. Four things, yes, four things. The first one stands by itself, and that's the one thing. And it's actually, I'm going to talk about this in a second. I have a little banner about this. Um, it's The One Thing by, there we are, by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. It's a short and really good book, and I have a lot of sources that are similar. This one was very concise and very easy to grasp. And the whole concept is if you give yourself a single goal, then you also give yourself no excuses why you can't reach that goal. If you have a whole bunch of goals, then you can kind of keep switching them off, and the ones that are less important kind of get mixed in with the ones that are really critical. And in this case, for your annual goal, you can expand upon it later. But initially, I would suggest that you write down just a single thing that you want to accomplish for the year. I want to learn how to speak French so I can go to France. I want to learn how to use the computer in ways that I don't know how to do now. I want to learn how to play piano so that I can hold a 10-minute recital for my family. Whatever your goal is, make it specific and actionable. And there's a whole acronym, SMART, and there's other variations on the same acronym. But the big thing is the goal has to be specific, it has to be actionable. And I would suggest you really want it to be a stretch goal. Saying something like, I'm going to get up every morning and eat breakfast, unless you have a real problem getting up and eating breakfast. For most people, it isn't a real big goal. It's something you do anyway. So that doesn't really count as a stretch goal. This is something that you really want to focus your year upon accomplishing in the course of the year. So you've written down your one big goal. And then after that, you probably want to write down a maximum of 3 goals for the first quarter, for the first 3 months of the year. And again, you're probably thinking, well, only 3 things. That's not much of a goal. That's hardly a goal. And really, why are there so few things on the list? Again, because if you really thought about the goals and really focused on them and about what you really wanted to get accomplished, then you're going to find out that they're probably pretty significant goals. Whereas we talk about the really big, hairy, scary goals. Something like you have no idea how to play piano, and the idea of giving a recital makes your hands sweat just thinking about it. And so that's a good goal. It's something that pushes you outside your normal comfort zone, outside your normal level of what you would do, and really pushes your life forward in a direction that you wanted to go in. Maybe you wanted to play piano for years, but by making that your goal for the year and then taking steps to make that happen, now you have a path forward, and you will find that you can do things that heretofore, previously you didn't think were accomplishable, because you could accomplish, because you never actually sat down and made it a priority. Probably you may have had other things competing with it, or little things that you thought were a goal but really were kind of chores. And so if you did your yearly one goal, and I'm going to assume that you did, then hopefully all those little quarterly goals, like we just mentioned, really should be in somehow supporting your goal for the year. If it's that, again, we'll use the learning to play piano example because it's a nice, good, tangible one, and people can envision that, including myself. So you have this goal to play piano and say, well, how can I get 3 goals to help me learn how to do that? Well, maybe one of the goals is learn how to manage my day better so that I have an hour free every evening or sometime during the day that I can use for some other activity, like practicing. Maybe it is learn how I can save money, or take specific steps to save money so that I have money for lessons or an online program to play piano. So all your little goals really ideally can support your big goal in some fashion, and they can be completely separate and distinct as well. It may be that one of your quarterly goals is to support your big goal, and the other 2 are other important things that are going on in your life that we're going to sit down and together plan where we're going to have a vacation, because we haven't taken a vacation together in 15 years. And so that's one of your quarterly goals. And some of you probably say, well, that's not a very challenging goal. but everybody is different. And maybe for some people, that's a very difficult goal to achieve. If it's difficult for you and it makes you uncomfortable thinking about the possibility of actually achieving it, then it's a good candidate for a quarterly or annual goal. So that's the essence of how to kind of prepare your year. And again, they're fundamentally different than resolutions. Resolutions are a bunch of actions you want to take. And if you think about it, you don't take actions just for the sake of taking actions. I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Okay, why are you going to lose 10 pounds? Because you just want to see if you can lose 10 pounds? Okay, maybe. But probably it's more because you really want to be able to walk up the flight of stairs faster, to do whatever it is that you want to accomplish. And that's the real goal for wanting to start a diet. And so I would suggest that it's probably a lot easier for your brain to capture. And we have already gone over this in the past few weeks. Once your brain buys in, then it's a lot easier to do things, because now you're not trying to force yourself along by willpower, which really doesn't last very long. And instead, you've convinced your brain why this is a good outcome, and now your brain will naturally tend to pull you along rather than you trying to push it along. It will pull you along to reaching your goals. And so, as before, there's a real pattern forming here. And like I said, instead of a to-do list with dozens of items, most of those items typically, if we look at our to-do list, especially the ones that we write out for the week or the month, most of those items aren't really that important to us. I want to put away the garden hose. Okay, there's a timetable because where I live, we have winter and it freezes and you have to get the garden hoses and stuff picked up before winter. But is that really a goal, or is it just one of those daily life chores or weekly or monthly life chores you have to do? My goal isn't something like I'm going to call somebody up and say, hey, I put away the garden hose. My quarter is complete. But something more significant, like I have the entire yard picked up so I can plant a garden, that's the goal. And then all the little daily chores help support your goal. Putting away the garden hose, picking up the tools, doing some weeding. And so again, it's little steps supporting the bigger steps that support the big goal. And so the three important pieces that come out here are really identifying what's really important to us. And the important part is that it's something that will have a real impact in our lives. What we're trying to do is something that really makes us feel better, helps us help others, helps us accomplish some particular task or some particular goal in our life. And so it's not just getting chores done. Those are great. Those are necessary. That's a different category of things to do. These are really setting goals to help you move your life ahead in a way that you want to. And then the next step is actualizing what we're doing, so that once we do that, our brain can grasp it. And once our brain figures out what's going on, even if it's a big, scary goal, we've already worked through it with our brain and say, no, here's what the steps we can do. And your brain will naturally say, right. And if we do this, that'll help it along as well. So now by actualizing it, envisioning it, you can really see the steps and do the steps to help you reach your goal. And that's a really important part. And then finally, like I said, part of the whole SMART, and I'll go through the acronym another time, but the whole SMART method of planning is that there's a deadline. So the reason that's important is mostly because otherwise we tend to start things and never really complete them. You get to that magic 80% point if you do any project management at all. Pretty soon after the project starts, you start asking people, kind of like, well, where are you on this particular task? Oh, we're about 80% there. And what 80% really means is that some work has been done and you're not finished. And it could be anywhere from 5% to 95%. But our minds, for whatever reason, at least in the West, we tend to latch onto that 80%. It sounds better than 3/4. Like if you're 3/4, kind of like, man, you still got a lot to do. And you're not really 90% because then you're almost done. So everything's 80% done. When you set a deadline and you give yourself a schedule, now you kind of ruled out giving yourself any excuses by having a little bunch of irrelevant tasks to hide behind, because you have this one of three things to get done this quarter, and that's the magic part. It's this quarter. And so by starting next year, by January, February, March, so by April 1st, you've promised yourself that you will have a certain number of things done. And that having that deadline there really helps motivate you. And it's kind of like, oh, I really don't feel like practicing piano today. It was kind of, ooh, but it's already the middle of February. And it means it's almost March, which means it's almost April. And so it just helps motivate you and keep it going. There's one more, even scarier step, though, and this is a difficult one for many people. I know it is for me as well. And that is take that written list of your 4 goals, the yearly goal and your 3 goals for that quarter. And we're going to be doing this each quarter, obviously. But take those 4 goals and send a copy of it to someone that you trust and ask them to help hold you accountable. And actually, I do this. There's 2 different little groups that I'm in right now, and then there's some others that I've been in the past. But right now, there's 2. One is with a good friend of mine who lives in Ireland, and every other Saturday we talk, and we go over all the things we promised the other one that we would do in those 2 weeks. And then we kind of have to face up to the fact that his name is also Jim. Like, hey, Jim, yeah, I know I said I was going to get this done, but I did not. And I use that mostly for the podcast and the website and all of that. And so it's very interesting. I mean, Jim has no power over me other than just being a friend that I've known for a number of years. But having to promise something to somebody and then come back and either with joy and enthusiasm. Last week, Jim was super pumped because he'd hit a bunch of goals that he'd been having trouble hitting for a while, and so he could say to me, it was really neat because he was just like he was totally psyched, like Jim, I finally got this done. We got the videos going, blah blah blah, and it was really good. And so it's good both ways. It gives you motivation to bring good news because then it pumps you up and you get all excited about things. And if you had to bring bad news, then you can go through and you can have kind of, an after battle report and say, okay, so what actually happened? Well, I was going to say it was this and this, but those are really just excuses. It was that I was scared to take this step. And then we talk through it and say, well, why were you scared? Well, I think it wouldn't appear well on the screen. Well, I'm looking at you in the same circumstance right now and it appears perfectly fine. So, and we just give each other encouragement of how to do things. So that's why you want to get somebody else involved if at all possible. The other way of doing it, which isn't quite as effective, is that you can write a note to yourself and review it in every week or every other week or something like that. Write a note, set it aside, in 2 weeks, pull it out and say, this is my note from January 1st, and now it's January 15th. And say, so on January 1st, I said in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to accomplish thus and such. Did I? And I actually, through Pat Flynn and then also through James Wedmore, have gone through this exercise. It's very interesting. In Pat Flynn's case, he would actually both cases, they would hold the letters. And so you'd write a letter to yourself and say, hi, I'm at FlynnCon 1. It's 2019, I think it was. Gosh, a long time ago. And this is what I'm going to accomplish in 6 months. These are the things. And actually, I was pretty harsh on myself. I said, okay, Jim, in 6 months, I don't want to be hearing the same excuses as to why you didn't get these things done. And so these are the goals we're going to accomplish. And, did this happen? Did that happen? And if not, why not? And so I was pretty direct, and I listed out like 10 or not even 6 or 8 things, I think, that I really, some couple major, some minor, and then gave it to the group at FlynnCon and forgot about it because they hold on to it. And I forget whether it was 6 months or a year later. I really don't recall. All of a sudden I'm picking up the mail one day and there's something from Pat Flynn. I go, what's from Pat Flynn? I go, oh, that's the letter I wrote to myself. How cool is that? And then instantly after that, it's kind of like, ooh, what did I say in that letter? And then you open it up and you read it and you go, ooh, I got that done. I got that done. And somehow that didn't seem important anymore. And so that's okay. And this one was important and I made no progress. And when you do that, it's good motivation to sit back and analyze what really happened. And, it brings to your own forefront how you undermine yourself when you don't actually follow through on things that you promised to yourself. And it really helps you on the next go round. At least I find it this way. Helps you on the next go round. When you set a goal, it does two things. One is, if the goals are relevant, then it's not really a goal, right? If the goal is, picking up the garden hose, that's not a goal. Throw it aside. But if the goal is really important, like learn to speak Spanish fluently, then you have to really sit and think about it. It's kind of like, if I put this down on my list in 6 months or a year, depending, I'm going to be seeing this. And how am I going to answer myself? And actually, I'll try and find it. Peru had an awesome ad for traveling to Peru back when people still did that thing pre-COVID. And it was a gentleman in his high-powered job ordering people around and stuff. It was available in both English and Spanish, which was fun for me. I listened to it in both languages. And it's where I found out a lot about Peru. I mean, that didn't come out quite right. I've read a lot about Peru and also on Mexico too, but it was interesting to see. It was about a 5-minute, 3-minute video, but all the cultures that they exposed from the country. And so here's this gentleman, and he's in his high-powered job, and he gets his video from himself at 21 or something like that, and now he's like 40, and in the some C-suite executive position. And so he throws it on his little video player and starts listening to it, and it's kind of like, all the things. Well, did you finish your degree? Did you cut your hair and get that corporate job? And he's kind of like, yeah, I did. Did you marry that girl? And it turns out he married somebody else. But it was just interesting from a multi-year standpoint, of looking at his life again. And it got me thinking a lot about my life, because like I said, this was about 3 years ago I saw the video and thought, and if anyone, if it's a good party trick to give to people at New Year's, say, so why don't you write down or make a video of yourself and all the things you want to do, and next year play that video back and see how many things you really accomplished. All the things you said you're going to do, did you do them? The things you said you weren't going to do, did you end up doing them anyway? I'm never going to, go and eat another fruitcake just because Aunt Mary likes to get fruitcakes, but she ate another fruitcake because she likes to get fruitcakes, whatever it is. And then that longer time perspective really changes how your body and your mind react to it. So that's the point of these goals here, is to do something for a 1-year period. And so at the end of 1 year, you get to go back, look at, you'll have, presumably 12 quarterly goals and the annual goal, the yearly goal. And you can get back and look at those and say, wow, how did I actually do? Did I accomplish what I wanted to do? And if I didn't, was because it wasn't really that important to me once I started to do it, or is it because I just let other things get in the way? And so that's kind of it for the evening. Like I said, these aren't unique to me. That book, The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, highly recommend it, and we'll get a link up on the website where you can get it. And I'm surprised, I don't think they have a new edition out yet. It's been out, it was actually published. Let me take a look. Put on my reading glasses here and take a look. Mine has all sorts of notes and things in it. I use it a lot. It's falling apart too. But and they're not telling me when it was published. Maybe that's one of the pages that fell out. Oops. Oh well. C'est la vie. That's my French, c'est la vie. It was published a number of years ago, so there's probably an update due before too long. But the fundamental core principles really haven't changed. They are that, limit the number of goals that you set, pick them carefully, as a couple of people I have as mentors, and one in particular, James Wedmore, has often said in his talks, basically the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask about it. And so that's really kind of the point of the goal setting exercise, is you really want to get really serious goals and only a few of them, and then work to make those happen. So that's kind of it for now. Like I said, we're going to go all into this probably next in 2 weeks, most likely. but I wanted to give you a quick overview. Oh, and yes, some homework. So for next week, I kind of challenge you to try and write down what you think would be your number one overriding, most important goal for next year, for 2022. You can always change it. You can always tweak it as the year goes through or before the year starts. But I really kind of would prefer that you write it down on a piece of paper and stick it up somewhere where you can see it. And then every time you walk by it, read it, say it out loud, envision it, uh, see if it still rings true to you, see if it's something that you want to dedicate a year to attaining, basically. And if you say it and you say it loudly and the family hears you, kind of like, really? You want to learn how to play piano? All the better, because now you have a bunch of people who have this hope for you. It may be an expectation, but a lot of it is just hope because they know it's important to you now. And so the more people you get involved in it, then you have the more people to support you. So that's kind of the homework assignment for next week. Write down your number one goal and then and keep saying it. Like I say, keep envisioning it and see if it still sits well with you and if it's something that you still want to do. So let me know how you do. And before New Year's, we'll go over the process again, like I said, and we'll also have some suggestions for setting meaningful goals. And if anyone writes in, we'll discuss the goals that you wrote and whether it's truly attainable or if it's too fuzzy. Because one of the things about a goal is it has to be actionable. And that's the A of SMART, by the way. In that having a goal, losing weight isn't a valid goal. Losing 3 pounds in the next month is. There's a time frame and there's a value that can be measured so you know if you've actually reached it or not. So, and if one of your goals is to attain peace or something like that, that may be a valid goal. And then the challenge in something like that is how do you define peace? Because you need some way to define it. It may be that your blood pressure is down. It may be that you curse less. That's certainly one of my leading indicators. It could be a lot of different things, but we'll talk about ways. We should be able to fit it in next week or 2 weeks. We'll try and talk about some ways that you can make sure that your goal is measurable in some way so that you can figure out whether or not you've actually attained the goal. So that's it for this week. And by the way, again, as always, this is kind of all an introduction overview of the sorts of topics that we're going to be covering in the course, 1 Minute to Happiness. And like I said, that course is currently in development. And it's just a way through some simple self-education, some guided instruction to perceive the world in a new and more engaging way, to learn how to control yourself and your beliefs so that you can kind of reach the goals that are really important to you, and by aligning your inner beliefs with what's important to you and your most heartfelt goals. So that's coming up, but that's it for the week. Thank you very much for stopping by. If you found something interesting, please pass it along. If not, please drop me a line. Tell me what you'd like to hear about. Have a great week. Thanks for visiting. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everybody, and see you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.